for production. But it comes at a cost. It's obviously going to be more expensive to make this one and this one, so you're not going to be paying the same price. The cool thing is that when we go with a single sensor, we can reduce in cost until we get to a camera that is smaller, that costs less, and that's why we're starting to see that 4K driven by the owner-operator. In the past, broadcaster would have all that high-end toys, like the HDC and everything, and the consumer had a point-and-shoot camera. Today, we see many people coming to a TV station, they shot 4K, and we're thinking, I'm not equipped to do 4K, but they did. They did it at a cost. They did it at higher compression. They did it with a camera that maybe doesn't have the full color spectrum. But one thing is certain, if you're using a pattern in front of your lens that is pretty much 30 years old, you're not going to get a BT2020 from it. You might get the dynamic range, but you might be a little bit short of the color. So you need another camera that will give you that. So as we're moving forward, the question becomes, do I invest more to get to the BT20, or can I do without? What we're telling you is that there are different cameras, and we have all these cameras with different level, different price point, and they have different capabilities. On paper, they look the same, but in reality, they're not exactly the same. Next. What is really cool is that when it gets from a business perspective, you need to have something to make an investment. And one of them is to go on something that you know, like HD. If your camera does HD, you cannot move away from HD. You need to be able to support your HD, but what if you were to put high frame rate in it? What if you were to go super high frame rate, 480p? So if you were in 30p or 5994i, it's actually 16 times slow motion. So then you have a business reason to go see your boss and say, can we invest in this camera? Because I'm going to be able to do that super slow motion. Oh, and by the way, if I just put a license key in, it's going to be 4K. So you need a business justification when you design a camera to say, it makes sense to make this one. If I was to make a camera that was single sensor, 4K, 3 colors, it wouldn't add up. Because I would need to change the lens, because I would need to change the compression, I would need to change everything. So every dollar that you invested on glass, on beautiful Arri lens, beautiful Canon lens, fantastic Fuji lens, fantastic Fuji lens, that would be lost. So we cannot change the way we're operating just because we think it's cooler. And that's where the product planner come in. We have engineers thinking they're going to change the world. We have people working in the basement at Sony and they're thinking they're going to do all of that. We're saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. It doesn't work like that. I'll explain to you what is usable, what is not. Next. It's almost finished. Next. So that is a camera that is shipping, that is 8K. It shoots 8K up to 120 frames per second. But what is cool is what you can do with it. Next. You can do things where you don't have a traditional application. You can do an 8K by 4K, 8K by 2K. You know what? We did that in NAB. We had 3 persons doing yoga, and we would shoot them with a camera at 8K by 2K, and we would project it on a screen at 8K by 2K. And that was easy to do. We could do it live because we had all the processor and everything, which are standard off-the-shelf Sony processor. We could do that because it made the viewing experience different. In the end, it doesn't matter what I'm telling you in front of this room saying about technology, whatever. If you cannot bring more customers to watch your show, there's no reason to make that show. It's all about the content. So if you can do something that is different, that brings people in, then it makes sense. If I'm giving you the same flavor as you've always had, but just with more resolution, it doesn't add up. Next. And I can do multiple stitch also next. I can put in studio configuration next. That's not important. This is where it's cool. This is a technology that we've developed and we've been showing for years, and there are still people who haven't seen it. So we're taking 2 4K cameras, we could take 2 8K cameras, we can take 1 8K camera, we have many ways of doing it. It's basically a platform. It doesn't care which camera or whatever. And we're basically taking an 8K by 2K, and we're basically doing virtual cutout. So maybe 4K is not the need that you had today, but that HD cutout means that you have 3 virtual cameras that you can move around with a mouse. And here's the kicker. They're not just static cutout like everybody else is doing. They're dynamic perspective cutout. So it means that when you're moving your picture toward the right, the shape of the frame changes. You move to the left, the shape changes. So if you have a picture that's shaped like that, when you put it back straight, it looks like you turn your camera. So you've just created a virtual pan. And you've done that because in that story from the lens to the living room, we had a company called Sony PlayStation, where we had fake players hitting balls at soccer. And we were able to calculate these things. That is an application that is different, that justifies ultra high definition. So ultra high definition is not simple. It is not that new. I'm sure that, Sebastian, you had scanners that were 4K a long time before we had digital camera that were 4K. We've been scanning film in higher resolution HD for a long time. It is not new. But when you want to apply to a broadcast industry, you need to have some workflow that is standard, and that means a codec that is more efficient, which is what we're offering, a family of XADC codec. It means you need to have a sensor that is future-proof, that will do more than 4K, that will do higher frame rate, which will give you the color spectrum of the BT2020 and the dynamic range of BT2020. If you choose to use it, maybe you won't. And all of these things together, they're a standard that we work with SMPTE and that we can deliver. And make sure that when you buy that camera, it is not a page in a magazine that says we were able to transmit 32K at an 888 color space in 320 frames per second. It is not just a project. It is something real that you can go see your boss and say, I have a business case for it. So that's how we plan a camera. That's how we design it. That's how we decide how a sensor is going to be made, or if we're going to make it even. There's many projects who go back to a basement, and they might be fantastic, but they're not ready for production. They're just too expensive. Next. Next. That's it.
All right, if we get all the presenters back up to the front, I think we'll go Mike Bliss for this. You can ask the embarrassing question. Grab your seat.